Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points. Donald Trump's war on Iran. What really is the end game in a fast developing situation? It is a conflict where the end game is simply not clear. We'll have voices once again from all the hot button areas in this growing, escalating conflict, plus every news that's coming in. But first, as always, I want to take you tonight through the top 10 developments for the day in that escalating conflict in West Asia. The West Asia war theater now expands as Iran doubles down, attacks Israel and multiple US bases across the Gulf countries. UK, France, Germany say they are ready to join the war. UK base in Cyprus also hit by Iranian drones. 3 US F-15 Eagles shot down on Kuwait's territory during Operation Epic Fury. The US say the jets were hit by mistaken friendly fire by the Kuwaiti air defense. All 6 crew members evacuated safely.
Police? Yes. 1 minute. 1 minute. One minute.
US War Secretary Pete Hegseth says US-Israeli strikes on Iran are not an endless war. Also calls the mission decisive and not about regime change. The US military says that a 4th US service member has been killed in the Iran attacks this weekend. Following overnight strikes by Hezbollah, Israel strikes back, takes out Hezbollah's intel chief in Beirut. Lebanese government bans military activities by Hezbollah. Gas prices soar as Qatar halts LNG production after the Iran attacks. Earlier, Iranian drones struck Saudi's oil giant Aramco, which then temporarily shut its Ras Tanura refinery. An Indian crew member is killed after an oil tanker is struck by an unmanned drone boat off the coast of Oman, triggering a fire, forcing the evacuation of all crew on board. This as hostilities between Israel and Iran continue to escalate. Sources say a senior US defense official has told congressional staff that there was no intelligence indicating Iran was planning to attack American forces before the US-Israeli military strikes. In a closed-door Pentagon briefing, it was acknowledged there were no clear signs Tehran intended to launch a first attack against the United States. Iran's ambassador to the IAEA says that the United States and Israel attacked Iranian nuclear facilities, specifically naming the Natanz facility as the target. The IAEA, the global nuclear watchdog, says there's no sign that Iran's nuclear sites have been hit. Russian President Vladimir Putin holds a telephonic conversation with the UAE counterpart Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, discusses the ongoing developments in the Middle East, speaks also to the Emir of Qatar. Dubai Airports announces a limited resumption of flights from Dubai International Airport and Dubai World Central Al Maktoum International Airport starting in this evening. As you can see, much happening across the world. Let's just give you a picture with the images that we are getting from different parts of the world of all that's happened today. Remember, there have been dramatic developments in Kuwait, where a US plane was allegedly, according to the Iranians, shot down by them. The US says it's friendly fire. You've seen the missiles which have also hit parts of Tel Aviv. Tehran has also been struck by the US and Israeli combined forces, as have other parts of Iran. So the war appears to be spreading, with even a drone hitting Cyprus today. And there you've got European countries now offering possible involvement in the war. So you have a situation now where with every passing day, the West Asia war is spreading across a region, leading to destabilization. And even earlier today, there were explosions heard in different parts of the region. Now, the killing of Ali Khamenei, remember, created the original leadership vacuum in Iran, raising questions over the future of the regime and the direction of the US-Israel campaign. US President Donald Trump has been urging the Iranian people to take back their country. This evening, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the war will not be prolonged. Strikes could reshape regional politics, but the key question remains, does Donald Trump have an endgame plan? Take a look.
America started the war, but does Washington know when to end it? The killing of Ayatollah Khamenei has left a leadership vacuum in Iran. It could end in a regime change, but what comes next is still a mystery. President Donald Trump on Sunday urged the people of Iran to take back their country.
Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. This wretched and vile man, I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country.
Airstrikes by the US and Israel took out a large section of the leadership, including some potential leaders who could have taken over.
They are the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. We are the world's greatest and most powerful nation, so we can do something about what they do. These intolerable threats will not continue any longer.
On Monday, Trump's Secretary of War, Peter Hegseth, assured the country that the war will not be prolonged.
To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president.
Trump's popularity is at a low. This year, he needs Republicans to win the midterm elections, failing which he becomes lame duck president. With Khamenei's killing, Trump could revive the Republican fortunes and leave a lasting legacy, but only if the war is short and the regime that succeeds Khamenei is moderate. That brings us to the next question. Does Trump have an end plan? Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's first go to our ground reports today. I want to go first to Mayan Hoffman. She's a journalist in Tel Aviv. Appreciate your joining us, Mayan. We've been hearing through the day of missile attacks directed at Tel Aviv. There was one reportedly in which at least a dozen people have been killed. Can you give us the latest in terms of the situation on the ground, Mayan?
Yes, thank you for having me here. So I'm here now actually back in Jerusalem. I've been traveling between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We had a direct missile strike actually in Beersheba today. That is in southern Israel. There were 19 people injured, most of them moderate, many of them also suffering from shock. That was in a residential area in southern Israel. That followed a very large scale attack that happened yesterday in a community called Beit Shemesh. That area is between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. In that attack, 9 people were killed, many of them family members, siblings, mothers, and sons that were killed in that attack. In addition, dozens there were also injured, many of them still hospitalized. The rocket attacks have been pretty much ongoing. And of course, Hezbollah has also joined in with Iran. So we are seeing new strikes happen in the north, the IDF attacking Hezbollah, but Hezbollah also sending rockets into Israel.
Man, therefore, are you saying, are there civilian areas which are being targeted across Israel? And is there any specific region that has been targeted?
Well, I wish I could tell you there was a specific region, but in fact, missiles have been across the entire country. Generally speaking, when the IDF, the Home Front Command, sends out that there will be sirens, it's for all of central Israel, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, etc., and the south and the north have been being targeted. So really the entire country, but definitely civilian areas. Civilians have been asked to hunker down near their homes, be close to a bomb shelter, because rockets could come at any time. The way the Home Front Command alerts people is they send out a preliminary warning that rockets have been fired, or missiles or drones from Iran, and then they let us know when the rocket has gotten closer. You have about 8 to 10 minutes from that initial warning to when you have to get in.
I want to go to Tehran, where Yusuf Jalali is joining me, senior journalist there from Iran. Yusuf, give us the situation in Tehran. Mayan tells me that across Israel there have been these missile hits, but give us the situation where you are in Tehran, where presumably there have been even more strikes and even more casualties. One report suggesting officially at least over 500 people have died in the attack so far. Mayank?
Iran has witnessed the most severe day in terms of the scope and the extent of the strikes that it received today. The capital, Tehran, was a scene of explosions, massive explosions everywhere, nearly everywhere. It was like a rain of bombs falling everywhere in the capital, Tehran. And as you mentioned, the death toll is now, as put by Iranian officials, is exceeding 550 people. But of course, today was very much significant in the sense that the Israelis and the Americans are no longer focusing on Iran's missile production facilities. They're now turning towards Iran's police and, of course, Iran's Basij paramilitary force, which is affiliated to the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps. The reason they're doing this is that they believe that the Basij and the police was involved. These institutions were involved in suppressing the protests that erupted in late December last year and continued until January this year. So we can see Basij stations everywhere. The Basij stations are not limited to the areas outside the urban areas, of course. They are built inside the country. And that is why you see that bombs and explosions are everywhere. And neighborhoods inside Tehran are now targeted. And that is why you see that people are in a state of panic. And the war seems very close to targeting civilians right now, because those entities and those buildings, Basij buildings and, of course, police stations, are located inside civilian areas, commercial and residential areas. And that is why this increases the risk of civilian casualties.
It's been, 24 hours, 36 hours since the news came that Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, had been killed in one of the attacks. Has Iran come to terms with it, to what has happened, that its Supremo, who's ruled the country for over 35 years, is no longer there? And has there been mourning or celebration? Because videos of both, some showing celebration, some showing mourning, have come across social media. Can you give us a sense on the ground?
Well, of course, it's surprising how Iran moved past this incident very fast and easily and really smoothly. Nobody expected that the Islamic Republic would survive losing its supreme leader, a leader that has been ruling the country and has been leading the country for almost 4 decades now, has gone, and everybody expected that just was expecting that the Islamic Republic would collapse following the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. But of course, it's surprising that the Islamic Republic has survived this incident. And you can see that different Iranian officials are now trying to project resilience and saying that this is nothing that can shake the Islamic Republic. This system is built not based on persons or individuals, but this is a system that is a resilient system. This system has been experiencing and witnessing and absorbing shocks, from economic shocks to military shocks. And that is why you see that the Islamic Republic continues to rule the country.
But surely, in conclusion, they must be rattled by the fact that so many senior commanders have been killed in these very precise attacks. There are reports that the missile strikes that Iran has launched as a counter are seen to be an act of desperation. Does Iran have a strategy?
Well, of course, Iran's strategy this time is different compared to what happened in June. Back in June, it was the first large-scale confrontation between Iran and Israel, and neither side knew the other side very well back then. The Israelis launched attacks against Iran. Then Iran paused for 24 hours before launching salvos of missiles towards Israel. It was a conflict that was very much between Israel and Iran, and that is why the Iranian missiles that targeted the Israelis and the Israeli territories were hard to be, of course, absorbed by the Israelis, and the Israelis suffered severe blows out of those missiles and rockets. But this time around, it's a battle between Iran the United States and Iran and Israel. So the Israelis and the Americans are jointly launching this operation against Iran.
Right.
And this is why Iran knows very well that its missile capability is no longer going to save it from the war or from a defeat in the war. So the change in this strategy is that Iran really changed the nature of this war and turned it into a regional war by targeting those energy facilities and trade hubs in the region, in Qatar, in the UAE, other places, and even in Oman, which has been mediating between Iran and the US. So this is now Iran's card. It is trying to inflict heavy damage on the trade hubs in the region and to try to pressure regional countries to urge the United States to halt its actions inside Iran.
Okay. Yusuf Jalali for joining us there and giving us a perspective from Iran. Not easy always, I know, in the conditions that you are in to get internet connection, but I appreciate you joining us with that live update at this moment. Now we're getting more breaking news. The US President Donald Trump has once again vowed to escalate the West Asia war. Trump has now told the US media, US military is knocking out Iran, but the big wave is yet to come. Trump says the biggest surprise has been Iran's attacks against Arab countries. Trump says we don't know what succession plan is in Iran, who their new leader will be. Now, that's very different to what Trump was saying just a few days ago when he seemed to suggest that there was a clear regime change plan in place. But he is vowing to escalate the war in West Asia. Remember, at least 4 US soldiers have been confirmed dead as of now. With that breaking news, I want to go to a special guest, Colonel Douglas McGregor, US Army Colonel, former senior advisor to Secretary of Defense under President Trump, joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Colonel McGregor. How do you see what's happened in the last 72 hours? It appeared that unlike in June, where Israel and the US virtually had a free run of the skies of Tehran, now the ballistic missiles are spreading across the region. Iran is striking back at UAE, at Bahrain, at Kuwait, and making it, as Yusuf just described, a regional war. Do you believe America is prepared for this, for a long war now?
No, and I hope that your audience understands that this war is now an Indian emergency as well. If India's $500 million investment in Chabahar is on fire and its oil routes are blocked, then Indian interests are at severe risk. You depend upon 2.6 million barrels of oil to flow through to your ports from the Strait of Hormuz every day. If that closes, then every Indian family ends up paying a war tax they didn't vote for. So I think I hope that India understands this, because India has a role to play in this crisis.
We'll come to the Indian role, but what you're saying seems to suggest that you also believe that the arena of conflict this time is spreading far and wide with serious economic consequences. Am I correct?
Well, of course, every American base in the region has been hit. Even the American air base at Incirlik in Turkey has been struck. All of these bases have been rendered unusable by us, whether they are seaports or airfields. It doesn't make any difference. So Iran has done really a spectacular job of simultaneously attacking all of these critical bases very early on. And finally, remember, this is probably going to go on for weeks or months unless someone sobers up in Washington. But the thing that will decide this outcome is logistics. We simply don't have enough missiles on hand, and we have a very long line of communications that takes us all the way back to the United States. We've lost most of the ports, virtually all of them in the region, that we would normally use to reload ships, reload missiles, reprovision our forces. So our elements at sea as well as on land right now are limited in how long they can maintain this war, contrary to what is being said in Washington right now.
So are we to understand that Washington was not prepared for this kind of Iranian retaliation? Is that what you're suggesting, that in any war game planning in Washington at the Pentagon, there was no idea that Iran would immediately escalate this or try to escalate it into a regional conflict which could then get far more prolonged?
Well, whether or not someone in the Pentagon knew anything or thought it all through is a question I can't answer. But one thing is very clear. We don't have an end state in mind. There is no off-ramp. The conditions that we demanded, which were really Israel's conditions from Iran, could not be met. They never could. So it's very obvious that what we need today is a way to stability. Right at the moment, we can't get there. You know, by the way, I think it's very important for people to understand that this war began with the Israeli strike. And frankly, at the time, we were not yet ready to fight, but we decided that we would go in support of Israel anyway. So I don't think any of this is going to any sort of agreed strategic program or schedule.
You made a very interesting point. You seem to suggest that this war, in a way, is being driven by the Israelis. They did the first strike, and the Americans are simply following on that, which is very strange. That normally doesn't happen. Normally, it's the other way around, that the U.S. takes the lead. Are you saying it's been very different in that sense? Netanyahu is the one who has virtually pushed Donald Trump into this war.
Netanyahu has more influence in Washington, where essentially the Israel lobby has purchased the Congress and the White House. President Trump owes his position in the White House to Zionist billionaires that funded him. So Israel is very much in control. The United States is not. And this is a serious problem. You'll note that the Secretary of Defense talked about Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism. Well, that's a lot of nonsense. He's referring to things that happened 40 years ago. Iran has changed profoundly, and Iran is not a state sponsor of terrorism. If we were really concerned about radical Islam and terrorism, we'd be focused on Pakistan. Pakistan is the wellspring of radical Islam, financed in large part by Saudi Arabia. And now we have a government in Syria, which is a product of ISIS and al-Nusra and al-Qaeda. So why are we attacking Iran? We are attacking Iran because it's the last state in the region, at least at this point, that is presenting resistance to Israel. Israeli or Jewish supremacy in the region cannot be established until Iran is eliminated as a major player. So this is no longer about regime change. We're trying to destroy the Iranian state.
But so when Donald Trump today turns and says that, look, we're going to escalate this war, you've not seen it, we're in an unprecedented manner. It may take weeks. He's also warned of casualties. We've already got confirmed reports of 4 American soldiers. Are you saying it could get worse? Because one red line we are told is that there will be no use of U.S. ground troops come what may.
Well, there can't be any use of ground troops simply because we don't have the ground troops to send. Our army is a fraction of what it was in the past. We simply can't project power into the region. If we try to project power into the region, ballistic missiles will destroy us, cruise missiles will destroy us. This is a new world we're in. We're seeing the end of an old era and the beginning of a new one. You know, if you just look at the UAE, for instance, it is being effectively taken out of the world economy by a few cheap drones. And our missile defenses have turned out to be completely inadequate to the task of protecting the Gulf states, where we've invested time and money to effectively protect them. Well, we can't do it, and that's being demonstrated. I think the world is changing dramatically right now.
So, Colonel McGregor, do you believe, therefore, regime change is possible, or will that be off the table? Will this now be the U.S. and Israel claiming, look, we got Ali Khamenei out. Now we'll press the pause button, perhaps, and go back to the negotiating table? Does the U.S. have the appetite, I come back to it, for a prolonged confrontation, as you're saying, is more likely?
No, there's no appetite in the United States for any sort of major war, let alone a long war. That's something that most Americans are unalterably opposed to. The Israelis have purchased the Congress and the White House. That's why we're doing what we are doing. There is no pressure or interest in the United States in any of this. You know, what we want in the United States has nothing to do with what President Trump and Congress are doing right now. Really needs to be understood. In the meantime, supply chains, the global hub in the UAE with aviation, these things are being destroyed. You've got 4.6 million of your citizens stranded in the Gulf. India faces a domestic humanitarian crisis that no evacuation can easily handle. This is a disaster. That's why I said I hope that the Indian government, which is probably the only adult in the room left right now, can bridge this gap. We're entering a sovereign shift. The future of the world is not being written in Washington anymore. By the time this is over, the Sykes-Picot Treaty, which created all of these tiny Arab states after the First World War, will be irrelevant. The future is being written now in the Persian Gulf and in Asia. It's time really for everybody to understand the world has changed. America doesn't want it to change. That is the American government. We're really fighting against the future right now, not just Iran, because Iran is not our enemy. It's Israel's enemy.
But in conclusion, you've got the might of the American forces, you've got and technology, you've got Israel with perhaps the sharpest intelligence that you can get, and also a very strong force with technology. And you've got other nations slowly grouping, rallying around the US and Israel. Are you telling me that Iran can resist this, you believe, for an extended period?
Yes, I think Iran is resisting. And that's really all Iran has to do. Iran is the one that has to endure, it has to survive, and I think that it will. The United States is in a very difficult position now because of all the bombastic rhetoric from President Trump. We keep advertising ourselves as the most powerful nation in the world. That means that Iran has to submit unconditionally to whatever we demand based on what the Israelis demand. That's not going to happen. In the meantime, I think we figured out that a few $1,000s worth of drones can take down a $500 billion economy in the Gulf. The UAE, a great example. This thing is going to drag on for months. The Chinese and the Russians are watching. Iranian air defenses are beginning to be effective. The missiles that Iran has are almost inexhaustible, whereas the missiles on our side are very limited, and we can't produce them quickly. We can't surge power.
Right.
We can't surge missiles.
Okay. I'm going to leave this, Colonel McGregor, there. You've, in a way, spoken out your mind and given us a very different perspective, in a way, there from the United States. I appreciate you joining me here on the show tonight. I want to turn, given the fact, as we said, and Colonel McGregor seems to believe that the nature of warfare is changing and the Iranian ballistic missiles are actually doing damage to the countries around them. How does this all play up? Who better to answer that than Sandeep Unithan, who tracks defense for the India Today group and knows a thing or two about war games, if I may call that. Sandeep, Iran versus 14 nations. Try and explain to our viewers where this is happening, how Iran is slowly spreading the war across the region.
Well, thanks, Rajdeep. What we're seeing here in West Asia right now is one of the most interesting conflicts in the history of the world, where one country has simultaneously targeted over a dozen nations in the span of just 72 hours. And it began, of course, on the 28th of February with Operation Urgent Fury and Operation Roaring Lion, launched by the United States and Israel against Iran. And they took out Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They assassinated him. This was an unprecedented series of strikes. The defense minister was killed. Top military commanders were eliminated, 20 or 30 of them. These were decapitation strikes. Again, something that we've never seen being done. One country launching decapitation strikes against another country's leadership. This is normally done against terrorist groups. This was done against one country. And now Iran has launched retaliatory strikes. It has expanded the zone of conflict beyond just Iran. Of course, it's taken that conflict to a 3,000-kilometer arc, starting from West Asia all the way, Cyprus, right up to Oman. That swath of countries it has shown the ability to target all of these countries. Let's take a look at the countries that it's been targeted. Of course, it struck the US Fifth Fleet headquarters here in Bahrain, right here in the center of the Persian Gulf. It's just a few hundred kilometers away from Iranian missiles. This is something that Iran has planned to do for a very long time. They showed what they could do last year when they targeted some of those US bases in this region. Bahrain, of course, is one of the key bases. It houses the US Fifth Fleet right here. That is believed to have been struck multiple times. There have been explosions reported over there. They've struck a radar site. They've struck the headquarters of the US Fifth Fleet. Now, each of these attacks makes it very difficult for the United States to refuel, replenish, rearm its platforms over there, because they're all in the line of fire from Iranian drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. And of course, the UAE was struck as well here right across the Persian Gulf, just across the Straits of Hormuz. There was a drone and missile barrage targeting not just the US bases over there, but also commercial establishments. Something like 137 missiles, 200 drones were launched. Now, this is, to give you an idea, Rajdeep, this Saddam Hussein in 1991 launched 88 Scud missiles in over 1 month, January to February of 1991. Iran has launched over 800 missiles in 24 hours. 800 projectiles have been launched in just 24 hours. It's unprecedented.
You're saying it's unprecedented, but if I may ask, where does that leave the air defense system? There's always been talk that the air defense systems that the United States has put in place, that Israel has put in place, will be sufficient to ensure, will act as, will ensure that the Iranians cannot achieve much success. Yet, as we are seeing in the last 24 hours, even the Burj being hit, Dubai International Airport being hit, clearly they've managed to get through those air defense systems.
Well, Rajdeep, even the best air defense systems in the world, the Patriots, the terminal high altitude area defenses, have a kill rate of something like 90 to 96%, right? But that means that if Iran swarms these defenses, there are a few drones, there are a few ballistic missiles that will get through. And that's what we've seen in the UAE, in all of these places which are heavily defended by Patriot batteries, THAAD batteries. Some of these drones have got through, ballistic missiles have got through. That's exactly how Iran has gamed this whole thing. They've planned on doing this, overwhelming the system with multiple swarms of ballistic and cruise missiles. They've started, of course, with the low-cost drones, the Shahed 136 that they've used. And of course, they've targeted Kuwait. Kuwait is another key frontline base. All of the bases which the US has in the region, which are meant to protect the Gulf countries, have been struck. 3 US F-15s, of course, went down in an incident of friendly fire just today. And that just tells you, when there's a fog of war, you have very tough times identifying your friends and foes. And this was taken down by a Kuwaiti Patriot battery. 3 jets in a matter of minutes came down. That tells you about the cost of this war as well. When you have so many aircraft in the air, your air defense systems kind of panic at times. There are these incidents of blue on blue, and that seems to have happened here as well. Iran is, of course, struck at Qatar, 65 missiles, 12 drones. The Al Udeid base, which is one of the largest US bases in the region, have been hit. There have been other energy sites as well that have been hit. So they've been, adopting a two-pronged strategy of not just striking at the bases, at the military bases, but also at commercial centers as well, just to raise the costs, to expand the arena of conflict, to ensure that it's not just Iran that suffers, but the entire region. Like I mentioned, a 3,000-kilometer swath of territory, right from Cyprus here in the distant west to Oman here in the east. And now that's a surprise. Oman, a country that was, mediating this conflict, that has been struck as well. Duqm port was struck.
I'm going to leave it there, Sandeep. You've given us a broad idea of just how this theater of war has expanded so very quickly. Thanks very much. I want to turn to more breaking news that we are getting at the moment from the war zone, because NATO allies who have also now spoken out. Spain has denied use of their military bases to attack Iran. Iran claims its nuke sites have been hit in the strikes. Iran claims that this was the US strike. Qatar, meanwhile, has just claimed it has shot down 2 Iranian fighter jets. But the very fact that We're seeing more and more countries being dragged into the theater of war, from Qatar yesterday to now Cyprus today. And as Colonel McGregor pointed out, were the Americans prepared for this kind of Iranian retaliation? Have there been certain miscalculations that the United States and Washington have made in the last 48, 72 hours? Did they even have an end game in mind? Our diplomatic affairs editor joins me. Geeta, the United States suddenly seems to be groping at the moment for clear answers as to what their end game is, if at all they had one at the outset. Do you want to tell us this entire regime change that Donald Trump spoke about at the outset? Now he says there was never a plan of regime change. He's not talking anymore of regime change. Can you tell us the miscalculation that they may have made?
Well, absolutely. There were, I would say it was myopic, and yes, there was miscalculation if the statements are to be believed. Now, Trump said, we want to go in there, we want to strike Iran because we want the regime out. Now, if you look at it, these are just airstrikes. There has been no modern precedent for a regime change through airstrikes. You need boots on the ground, and that's not happened. We are looking at the Saddam Hussein regime in Iraq that collapsed only after a ground invasion. Libya, again, another case after ground invasion. And so did the bombings in Kosovo. Slobodan Milosevic lost ground after ground invasion. So this is Saddam Hussein's collapse only after ground invasion. And similarly, Libya's Muammar Gaddafi's regime fell once the rebels seized the area. So bombings weakened the administration, but bombings don't really turn and throw a regime out. Absolute miscalculation. There are the layers and the structures that we see in the Iranian structure, political and religious structure, are very, very different. And that's why they are designed for shock absorption. They have done this for many, many years, Rajdeep. The fact that the structure is absolutely layered when it comes to the Iranian structure, it is the supreme leader. Then you have the political structure. It's not personality dependent. Khamenei goes, Arakchi in his interview to us very clearly said there's a council that will sit and elect another one. They've been doing this for years now, where they've seen assassinations take place and leaders propped up immediately after. The IRGC chief was killed and Wahidi was propped up immediately after. Power, like I said, is distributed in layers. It's not concentrated in one place. Supreme leader, elected presidency, clerics, revolutionary guards, and then the Basij militia. So absolute clarity, Rajdeep, when it comes to how Iran works. But I don't think DC or Trump, for that matter, and the Trump camp really took all this into account. And finally, miscalculation. When you're looking at going into Iran, you're looking at striking without causing civilian casualty and kill Khamenei. There are people in the streets of Iran. How are you going to avoid civilian casualty then?
Okay. Interesting, because clearly, therefore, Donald Trump is someone who perhaps is finding that Iran is not quite Venezuela for certain. Thanks very much, Geeta, for joining us. That's the big question we've been raising today. What really is Donald Trump's end game, if there is any more? Regime change, or is one order going to be replaced by another within the Islamic Republic of Iran? Has Trump really thought this through? Will Iran descend into chaos? Gulf safe havens exposed to war, and what should India's role really be at all? Ambassador Navtej Sarna is former Indian ambassador to the US and to Israel. Daniel Fried, former diplomat, is also joining us. Appreciate both of you joining us. I want to come to you, Navtej Sarna, first, because you've been seeing what's happening in the last 72 hours. You've served in Israel, you've served in the US. Is this an operation, as many now believe, directed and driven by the Israelis, with America playing a supporting role and now struggling to actually come to terms with the Iranian retaliation?
Thank you, Rajdeep. I think that sort of sums it up, except I don't think the US is playing a supporting role. The US is doing a lot of major heavy lifting and is also suffering in terms of US assets right across West Asia. But yes, it is a war which has been undertaken by the US with the very active instigation of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I don't think there's been any confusion on the part of Israel as to its objectives. They've been wanting to do this for a long time, and they have told Donald Trump that given the weakness of the Iranian regime, given the economic problems, given the weakening of the capacity in the June war, and given the protests recently, this is probably a great opportunity to remove the regime. And President Trump's, again, there was no confusion. He made it very clear he wants a regime change. Now, he may have realized that it was always a complex possibility. Iran has prepared for this moment, and whether anybody likes the regime or not is a separate matter. The fact is that this is not a regime, this is a regime which will fight to the end. And I think that is what we are seeing happening today.
Daniel Fried, do you believe, therefore, the US has underestimated Iran's capacity to retaliate? Perhaps Donald Trump believing that Tehran could be like Caracas and has got it badly wrong? Or is that premature to say? Do you believe that the sheer military might of the US and Israel will eventually see regime change? Or is regime change at all on the table anymore? You're on mute. You're on mute, Mr. Fried. Sorry, you're on mute.
Please excuse me.
Yeah,
No
go
longer
ahead.
on mute. Thank you.
Yes.
It is difficult to overthrow a regime using air power alone. That seems pretty clear from wars over the last 85 years. It is also clear, it seems clear that the Iranian regime is going to fight hard and create as much destruction as possible in the region. It has done so in a way that has alienated the Gulf states and even caused the French, British, and Germans to issue a statement offering cooperation with the US in defending against Iranian attacks. This is a remarkable statement. Whether or not Trump succeeds in regime change, I can't say. But I have noticed, I think you've noticed also, that President Trump has expressed US objectives in a variety of ways. Regime change is one, negotiations is another, and some kind of practical arrangement with a new leadership without regime change is yet a third. That would be something along the Venezuelan model.
Okay.
Trump has not defined his war aims clearly, partly because he doesn't know how successful the war will be, how much damage, how many casualties the US will suffer, and whether or not he can succeed in his maximum objectives. So he's holding out a variety of objectives, and he loves to keep his options open, as I think he's doing in this case.
Navneet Sarna, given what we are hearing from several of our guests in the United States, that Trump hasn't spelled out the clear objectives, what should India be doing? We've just heard Prime Minister Modi spoken to the King of Jordan. He spoke yesterday to the UAE leadership, expressed his support and solidarity. India has stayed silent on Ali Khamenei's death. There's no reports of India reaching out in that sense, although there was a conversation between our Foreign Minister Jaishankar and his Iranian counterpart, but nothing in the public domain in that sense in terms of any kind of sympathy or solidarity. Have we clearly picked a side? And our side at the moment is US-Israel. The Prime Minister was in Israel only last week. does it give us less leverage in any way to even mention de-escalation? Will we be taken seriously by the Iranians in particular anymore?
I think Rajdeep, the things are moving at so fast a pace that yes, I think India should not be worried or be hesitant about where we were or who our friends are or who are not so friendly to us. This is the moment to get active, to talk to every partner. After all, our entire approach to West Asia has been to build up bilateral relations rather than go in for an overall regional approach. So we have equities with each of them, and we must exercise them now because this is in our interest. We have about 9 million people spread across the region. Our energy intake comes from that area to a very large extent. And whatever happens there, whatever instability comes there, is going to be impacting upon us. So I think this is the time for India to step up the game of talking to as many people, to try and play as much role as we can and ask for de-escalation without hesitation. If we are close to Israel, then we should put pressure on Israel. If we are close to any of the Gulf countries, which we are, then I think we need to work with them because that's in the interest of our people. A lot of our people are going to get in harm's way if this continues. So I think these conversations that have now begun with the King of Jordan and others, I think these are steps in the right direction and should continue.
Now, but what happens to any reach out at all to Iran? Are you saying that at the moment, given the turbulence and the fluctuating situation, India does not reach out in any manner to Iran and waits to see what happens? Because India seems to be playing the fact that we went to Israel only last week, just 48 hours before the attacks took place, clearly seems to suggest that we are in a multi-aligned world, aligned at the moment with Israeli interests. You don't agree?
Well,
why have we chosen not to say a word on Ali Khamenei? Why did we choose not to say even one word on the death of the Iranian supreme leader?
I think that is something which is being debated about in our domestic politics extensively. And I think there are several aspects to it. Yes, at one stage, he's a sitting head of state. And for any other country to come in and take out, no matter what kind of a person he is, I think, a transition of international law into an area of complete confusion. On the other hand, I think if you analyze statements of a lot of other countries, India has also gone on what is being called the national interest paradigm. A lot of the Europeans, a lot of the Gulf countries have not condemned the killing of Ali Khamenei. So we have been silent on that aspect. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just trying to explain the policy behind it. At the same time, I think we have reached out to Iran. I think we have spoken to the Iranian foreign minister. And we are probably playing with the information that even within Iran, the society is today polarized. There are people who are mourning the death of their leader. There are people who are not so unhappy with the death of the leader, and that is within Iran. But I think we are a state outside, and at some stage we will have to take a line on what our stand is going to be in terms of international law. The fact remains today that no country is talking of international law. So India will have to choose its moment as to when do we start taking that line.
I'll push you once more, Mr. Sarna. Do we have a role to play, given that there are vast number of Indians in the Gulf, presumably? Do we really have that kind of leverage, you believe? Or given the volatile situation, it's best to stay out at the moment?
No, I don't think we have very great leverage in terms of the fact that, we can't go and tell somebody that, no, you stop shooting. We certainly don't have that kind of leverage. What we have is our own interest, and for our own interest, given the kind of people who are at risk there, we can use our friendships, we can choose our partnerships and keep speaking to people. But I agree with you entirely. This is a game which has gone beyond simply picking up the phone and talking to people. This is a major war, it's a major conflagration in the Middle East, and it is only up to the United States and to Israel to make it come to a halt, and they will do it at a time of their choosing, or when Iran has pushed them into a position in which they begin to feel the price. And this is what the Iranian regime, which is going to fight to the end, is trying to do by embroiling as many countries as possible. Donald Trump is not a man who would have said, I want 4 weeks of war. He's losing his MAGA base even. So I think the real players there are US, the Iranian regime, and Israel. And ultimately, I think we and many other countries, including Europe, have a very limited leverage on those decisions.
Okay. Navteet Sarna, Daniel Fried, for joining me. I appreciate both of you joining me on the show tonight. Thank you very much. There's lots to talk about. The war in West Asia is becoming more reckless and dangerous by the day. The Trump-Netanyahu duo have abandoned diplomacy, destabilized an already volatile region, risked a broader conflagration, causing global economic disruption. Unilateral strikes violate international norms. Yes, Iran's regime's track record, especially on human and gender rights, is deeply troubling, and as is its support for armed groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. But while regime change may be seductive in theory, it only throws up more chaos and is extremely dangerous as a precedent in international law. Iran is not Venezuela, as the US has realized in the last 48 hours. The killing of Ali Khamenei may be seen by the US president as a prize trophy. But does Trump really have a plan for what follows in his wake? Or is he being strung along by Netanyahu into a battle few Americans really want to engage in, as every poll shows? An embattled Iran too is now attempting to spread the conflict across West Asia in an attempt to widen the theater of war and put increasing pressure on the United States. Truth is, this is not a time for muscle flexing, but for quiet diplomacy to bring the warring sides back to the negotiating table before it is too late. Ordinary citizens across West Asia are paying a heavy price for the geopolitical hubris of a few individuals. The question is there anyone with the moral authority left to call out the warmongers? Don't forget, the same Donald Trump, when campaigning for president in 2024, promised that he would never take America to war again. Who will now call out? The leader of the United States, who simply won't follow a rules-based world order. Think about it.